What's up, man?
How are you?
Good, good. Let me see if I can get this volume worked out. Do this. Put a little mood lighting on. Alexa, turn the lights off.
Do I need to set mine up for like some purple romantic? Do you want me to?
N- No, no, I think this is the appropriate amount of romance for this conversation.
This feels good to you?
Yeah, yeah, the vibe is good. The vibe is good.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Nothing much. I hope I qualify for this podcast because I guess this is we weren't friends in middle school.
Yeah, we've taken it back now.
Yeah.
You're the
So
you're the first guest to never actually attend Wissahickon.
well, no, I
High
did.
school.
Yeah, high school, but I did attend every prom for Wissahickon junior and senior year, and not my own. I skipped my own.
Somehow then you've got more credentials than I do in that element.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think I just went to school at LaSalle, but everything else was Wissahickon all the way, and it would have been Wissahickon if I ended up sticking it out, but just we'll get into that. But so how do we start this thing off? Like what's the protocol here?
We're doing it. We're already in it.
Oh boy. I've already removed the fourth wall. Hello, audience.
No, we're doing it,
Uh,
man. We just like slide into these things, and it's very like informal.
yeah.
Um, I prefer it that way, more of a conversation than a checklist of questions that I have or anything like that.
I'm good at checklists, so um, yeah. So it's crazy because I started at Wissahickon because I just begged my mom. I was like, Mom, can I go to public school? I want to go to public school. Like I went to St. Helena's for grade school,
Oh,
and yeah. So I grew up in Bluebell, and just public school, the kids with no uniforms and just wanted to change, do something different. Well, I showed up at public school not knowing a thing about fashion. And I'm really bummed out that, and I searched high and low for my middle school yearbook to find out for picture day, I had a white button up short sleeve with denim, short sleeves. And I thought I was just really in there, but I think everybody in the seventh grade class made me know that was not the look,
that wasn't it.
you know. But yeah, I loved it. I thought I'd love it, but I showed up there and being the new kid, not knowing anything about fashion, it was like a fish in Shark Tank with some of the things, and that's one of the things. Not necessarily about me, but just bring to light in this day and age, like bullying. That's why I left after seventh and eighth grade. Like I didn't have a friend in the world there. It felt like um, Javier Marquis was
Yeah.
a friend of mine. Um, but I mean, I guess there were some guys, but I just remember Javier was always decent, like always a really good dude.
Well, now you grew up in Bluebell. Did you have friends that you knew from Wissahickon when prior to going to middle school?
No, that was the crazy thing, and that's sort of like the twist of life that would have happened. I hung out with Kevin DeProsperous
Yeah.
from because I played WRA soccer,
Right.
and I have great memories of dial-up internet at his house, downloading music. I know that guy's like a music encyclopedia
It's
now.
funny how many people from people of our school that Kevin DeProsperous influenced through music.
Right, right, yeah. So that guy and I we spent a lot of time together in middle school just from playing soccer together and Friday night pizza. All the stuff you I guess we forget now that we're like in our 30s. Like, what do you do when you're 14? Like, you got no car, it was just all sports and pizza,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out women, which I still haven't figured out. Um, but I spent a ton of time with him, going to dances at Epiphany and that sort of thing.
What's Epiphany?
It is a local, I guess, grade school here, Catholic grade school, right on Walton Road. here
Okay.
in Plymouth Meeting. So that would be like the St. Helena's Epiphany dance type thing.
I thought it was like the Rogue Teen Night or something. I was like, what?
Yeah, the rage. So I did that with him. Went to middle school. The only thing I really remember from middle school, like, was Mr. Schneider's seventh grade math class.
Mr. Schneider. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
you had to bring in the Sears catalog during Christmas time to
Yes.
write the checks and all that, that's the one. Mr. Schweikhaus
Yeah,
science class.
7B.
What I don't understand is why do you have to draw the cells? Like you look in the microscope. Who, like, that seems like a very specific thing that should be like a college level thing.
So science, that was Mrs. England Gordon. Is that right? Oh no, Schweighouse
I had
was 7.
Schweikhaus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right. She was 8th. So then, uh, I only remember with him we had to make like not draw. We had to actually make it like a 3D rendering because this is like
he probably saw me and said, "Nah, this kid ain't got it. Just give him the pencil." Because
oh, dude, I remember I had to make one, and my mom was away, and I half-assed it, and my dad was just like, whatever, and I put toothpicks on a sponge, like a legit like a kitchen sponge, and I put just like toothpicks and rubber bands around. I'm like, this is kind of what it looks like, and I think he called my dad and was like, what was this? What is this?
but I don't know what a nucleotide is, and I hope the people watching this agree because it is like I'm sure if you're going to be a biology major, that was probably real good. I wasn't going to an art major or a biology major, so that was really a low point for me. Was
uh,
was that?
well, what were you into then? You talk about like you played soccer and music, and what were
Yeah,
you like a sports kid growing up? What were your
yeah,
interests?
yeah. Big sports kid. Um, Soccer, baseball. Let's just say that I batted ninth after the pitcher. I was that bad at baseball. So
Same.
baseball wasn't my thing at all. Uh, I'm real good friends with Chris Stout and those baseball guys now. That no.
Were
Basketball, no.
for
Yeah.
you so you didn't know those kids in school at that point, right?
Right.
You're
So the story goes like this. After eighth grade, uh, again, I'm not harping on it, but just there was a lot of bullying, a lot of like, I hated it there, got beat up. I was actually, after I listened to the Javier Marquis podcast, I wrote to him and I said, "Man, I just want to thank you for like always being a solid dude and all." I said, except for that one day that you and I got into a little scrap and ended up in ISS together, and we had a good laugh about that. But so after that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go back to my brother went to LaSalle High School. So I was like, let me just go there and just follow like what my parents suggested. And wouldn't you know that the summer between eighth and ninth grade, I meet a kid named Kevin Knable and playing hockey up at the Wench Run Park near our where I grew up.
yeah.
Him and I hung out every day. We would meet there for hockey. Who else was there? Eric Payne. I got
Yeah.
introduced to Eric Payne that way. George Berry. Uh, then when I started hanging with those guys, Chris Woodland, Steve Pileggi, like these are all the guys I got to know
Hmm.
after I already started going to LaSalle, and that's how. Funny side story. One day we go over to Chris Woodland's house, and I walk in, and we're going upstairs to play Xbox or something. I see Simone Woodland, who was in my class. I go, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And she's like, "Christian's my brother." I'm like, "Ew," But that was I don't know why that like stuff like that sticks in your head, but yeah, I never made the connection. But after I met all those guys, it's been like best friends for 25 plus years now. So if I would have met them maybe a year sooner, I probably would have stayed at Wissahickon and went to Wissahickon High School.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never went to a LaSalle prom, but we worked a little scheme out that I got to go to all the formals and all the proms at Wissahickon. So
See, I remember like one incident in middle school where you were getting like beat up and coming out of gym class. And I ran up. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. I hadn't really seen like a fight. I've been in fights, but not like a, you know, what seemed like an unfair fight. I guess I hadn't really ever seen that. And I remember running and I had to go get Mr. Stokes. And I was like, we called you Hoagie back then. And I remember
Yep.
saying, like, I said, they got Hoagie downstairs. And he, like, jetted out. And he ran down those stairwells. I remember let you out in the hallway there. And,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that that was, like, a thing that I wasn't aware that was a thing you were going through in middle
Yeah.
school.
It's crazy. I mean, everything in life happens for a reason. I firmly believe that 1,000%. Um, but because of that, and we'll get into this too, but I coach youth lacrosse now, and I asked to be in either fifth and sixth or seventh and eighth grade because I just remember what it was like to be that age,
Mm,
and those kids really put up a good facade, and some were going through things at home, and I just feel like
mm.
I don't know if you could be a sounding board or like something positive to somebody in that age, like that's a really good thing to do. I learned a lot from that time in my life. I wouldn't change it. I don't blame anyone per se. I have some good memories. Dan Hornberger.
Yeah.
He was buddy of mine at that time, and it was just life. It was the first time I mean, going to St. Helens was such a small class, and then being in
Right.
sixth or seventh and eighth grade, and then starting to figure out about girls, and it's like, oh hey, hey, oh it was cool. I don't know why I didn't play sports at Wissahickon. Probably because I felt like I didn't fit in. I was doing WRA, but
Mm. I
you
always
know,
found it hard to do extracurriculars like sports in front of classmates because I was not in any type of like upper echelon. The
mhm,
anxiety of playing baseball and or soccer, I was not
yeah,
good at anything. I felt comfortable playing basketball because at least I knew the rules. But like that was it was
yeah,
for me. It was very much like not. I never got involved in any of that stuff
yeah,
in middle school or high
yeah,
school. By that point, it was over. But you coming from a smaller school into a bigger school, I've talked
mhm,
to a few people, in Ambler that did the same before coming into high school. But middle school's, that point where you're starting to try and make connections
right,
for the first time, and people usually say that sports is the thing that helped them make those
right,
connections.
yeah. I mean, I'm just glad I had like Kevin the Prosperous. Like I said, him and I, we always joke like kids nowadays that they listen to this music and they talk. I see like the Biggie Smalls T-shirts
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Tupac, and I was like, I should have one. I was like, I remember where I was when Biggie got shot. Like, I remember Kevin the Prosperous comes running into this Epiphany dance we were at, and he's like, "Yo, Biggie just got shot." And like, I don't know why I remember that. Like, I'm a white kid from Bluebell. Like, I'm like, damn. He's like, yeah, rest in peace or something.
Can
Like,
we break this down of how that he would have even possibly, because this is pre-internet.
that's a big fact.
This is pre cell phone, pre internet. How did he find this out?
Yeah, he
In
did. We would have had to be on the dial-up modem. Yeah, I'm telling you, that kid is one of the. There's few guys in this world like Chris Woodland is one of them.
mm,
Just a complete music junkie. You're same thing. Like if I could say some of you, you'd be like, "Oh, Beat Nuts in '98. That was
yes.
track three,
Watch
and
out now.
that was the third bar." Like me, I'm like, "Yo, that was a cool song. Who sings that?" Like, um, but yeah, that's so true. I never even thought of that fact. How he found that out back then. It was things seemed much better back then.
I
Because you
with
went to play
life.
hockey up at the park, and I would call my mom to get picked up, and I would have to call her collect. And be like, you have a collect call from, hey mom, I'm ready to be picked up at the park. You know,
The classic. That's the classic move. Well, life moves so much slower. I mean, I remember. It's funny we're saying life moves slower. We have these memories of these famous deaths, but I remember when Tupac died and being in Miss
mm-hmm,
Papadopoulos's music class
mm-hmm,
and playing. I think Machiavelli had just come out, so playing "Live and Die in L.A." And that was like the the throw 'em up song for Pac.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like music is such a stamp of time, and I know a lot of people say that, but you could just think of different songs, and it's like again with Kevin, we would hang out every day almost, and then we would sit on his front porch, maybe sneak a little liquor from his dad's cabinet or something, and be sitting there and be like, "Man, we're old, like 30. We're gonna be doing like major things. We're going to have like houses and like wives and like, but it's just funny how I'm like, now I'm like 30. Hmm. Like, I don't feel that old, but time goes by. But we would listen to songs, and he had this teal silver Accord
Ooh.
that he got from his sister. She kept coupe, 2 door, nice. She kept it spotless. When you're younger, you get your first car, you think like you're really doing something big. Like we painted his windshield wiper arms like 7 different colors, this and that. And we used to ride around listening to the Beat Nuts and this and that. He had the neon. We would go over to Rita's Water Ice and like post up. Like
Yes,
nobody's
the post up.
yeah, like nobody's looking. Nobody cares that you have ground effects on like it's just, and
That
we had
was
this
so
one
important.
15-inch subwoofer that went from Kevin's car to Eric Payne's Buick to, or no, Eric Payne had the Regal or whatever, to Chris Stout's whatever he had into
Mm-hmm.
my station wagon. Like everybody had this system back then, and if you liked the girl, you dubbed her the CD of like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
these are so, and then you got to hand it to her, and like hopefully not too many people are around because you look like a creeper, you know.
the
But that
mixtape.
was yeah, the mixtape. Like, I find you attractive. I hope you have the same taste in music.
I like
I
you.
feel like
I
that's
hope
what
you like loud, aggressive hip hop. This is for you.
the locks,
Oh,
flat out. If a proponent of the locks, and again, Woodland introduced me to him, and him and I have been on that. Everybody was with Jay Z with the Blueprint and all that.
hmm.
Nas, I
So in middle school, I mean, this happens to be my wheelhouse, but I remember like middle school, early high school, like I was not a Jay Z guy. It took. I remember after Biggie died, and he had Jay Z had Life and Times of S. Carter as the second album, and he had that Sunshine song. He was on tour for the P Diddy and the Family concert with everyone, and I was not feeling it. It wasn't until Volume 2 where I was like, okay, this guy's got something.
mhm. What is the if you had to pick 2 concerts that you've been to
Oh.
that were like that changed me. Like I am different, remarkably different from walking in there to walking out of that concert.
Mm. Best show I've ever seen that was just like opened my eyes was Usher and the Roots Picnic about 4 or 5 years ago. The Roots backed Usher, and Usher, Usher at the time had that that song, oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
right, and some of the more like auto tuney whatever, and I was not that into it. And I think I was sleeping on the nostalgia and the classics, but then when Usher's up there and it's a one-man show, and often with these Roots picnics, they bring a lot of special guests, and Usher didn't do that. It was just him for like 2 hours. And it was the closest I think I've ever felt to like that Michael Jackson moment where you're just
Okay.
watching the guy do everything that he's done and you've probably made fun of, and he's just kind of doing his dance around the
Right.
microphone, and you're just like, oh, like this is the Usher thing. But then he like turns and he hits that thing. He just like starts going into the confessions. You can just go, this is the shit. Oh my god, I forgot how much. And then it just hits that, and then he's going all the way back with Nice and Slow, and you just go, wow, these are undeniable.
That was the hit.
And then you just go, how long have we been here? I feel like he's done like 31 songs or something. You forget he's not to be slept on in that way. And I remember just coming out of that feeling like, wow, that was wild.
Mm.
That's maybe up there as number one. Man, and number two, the Roots. The first time I ever saw the Roots, at the art museum, right when I got to college. It was my second year in college, I think, and I just joined the radio station, and they did a show with the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. And I'd never
Mm.
been to a show with my peers before. I had only been to one concert before, just with my dad, to see New Edition and 112. And this was my second
Unfair.
concert ever. Yeah, also a great show. And
Nice.
I remember just like seeing the Roots, and I just heard of them as kind of like this hippie backpack rap group, but I didn't realize it was like live music. And I'm lucky in the sense of like having that appreciation for the live music aspect of it.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of people never have really seen the Roots play, jam and
Mhm.
everything. And it just completely changed the way that I look at music and really my whole time from after that point, because I did college radio, and the way I've accepted just non-radio, non-top 40 stuff into my life. I think it started with that aspect that, you know, like Kevin, who maybe knew a lot of these deep cuts and a lot of this stuff that never got played on the radio when we were kids, that you go, oh wow, this person can introduce me to those things. I never was able to open my mind up to that until I think that moment there when I saw the Roots, and I was just like, oh wow, there's just so much fun to be had from stuff that, contrary to the Usher world, where I grew up with all these stuff that everyone else isn't listening to, you can introduce
Right.
other people to it, and it started with that moment there when I saw them first time ever.
Nice. That's solid.
You?
All right, so I'm gonna start a little off the wall for a moment. Garth Brooks, uh-huh, at the Wells Fargo Center. I went myself, got a ticket for $18 the day of in a club box,
Okay.
and he put on Entertainer of the Year type show, where it was just, I don't know. I'm really connected to country music and pretty much any music that tells a story behind it. And a lot of those stories that he was telling really resonated with me. I'm more of a hip hop and country fan from like 1990 to like '06. And that's what I tell people. And they're like, that's real specific. I was like, well, is what it is. Um, so that was really great. But the one that really like comes back to like high school time, the Up and Smoke tour at the Spectrum, I think it was 19 or 2001, something, or maybe like 98 to 2001, somewhere in there. I have it on VHS still, and it popped up on my timeline on one of these social medias. And I just sat back and I was like, we didn't even know what we were looking at then. It was like, even the non headliners, like Corrupt, Daz, whatever, like all
Mac
these guys that
10,
Mac 10, like they brought the stuff.
Warren
I don't even
G,
think they do it. Let's not even get into regulators. Like
Devin the Dude.
everybody, like they brought the car out on the stage and did the low rider. Like they made it bounce. You don't see that at concerts now. But then you had Eminem come out when he just was fresh on the scene.
I need to just stop you there just for a second, because that's incorrect. And the only
Okay.
reason I
Well,
need to correct you is because it's what makes that show even more incredible, is that he wasn't fresh on the scene. He was 2 albums in, but happened to be
mm-hmm.
the number one artist in the world. That was
Uh-huh.
the Marshall Mathers LP, right?
Okay.
Which I believe was 99. Um, he was the number one artist, and he was opening the show in the orange jumpsuit. He was the number one artist in the world opening the show, because the headliners were Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. That makes it so much more incredible.
Right. I guess when I say fresh on the scene,
I know
because
what you
now
mean. I know what you
we're,
mean.
but it's just like,
He wasn't a legend. He was just the new thing. But
it was just like,
I want
he
to
was the
clarify
reason
for
why we
people
were,
who don't know how huge that is. That would be like, that would be like if Cardi B opened up for Lil Kim and Foxy Brown on a world tour,
true.
and you would go like, I want Cardi to come out at the end. Like, no, she'll be on at 8:30.
Get in early. I remember, so you mentioned your first concert, and it's between two. It was either Dave Matthews Band at the Vet.
I need a Dave Matthews Bell. Every time someone mentions Dave Matthews Band for this podcast, I need ring a little bell here.
Well, I'll clarify. That concert, I didn't buy a ticket to. I didn't have anything. Someone won them at school and invited me to go. I didn't know a single song. I think I walked around the 700 level the whole time because when you're at a concert, like you really need to know the music. I feel like to, especially in a large venue like that where it's being pumped out to really understand. I was just like confused, lost, and just whatever. Or it could have been in sync at uh the whatever they called it, the Tweeter Center in
Yeah.
Camden.
Yeah. Susquehanna
Because
Bank Arena for you kids out there.
yes, yes, indeed. Because my buddy Kevin Knable, his sister had an extra set of tickets or so. And again, we have no car. We're 14 or 15 years old. We'll go. I remember one of the guys chugged a couple 40s in Kevin's bedroom before we left. And by the time, and every time I drive into Philly, I think of this years later, he was crying. He had to pee so bad. We had to pull off at the Girard exit at the zoo. And he's like, I drank these 40-ounce beers and I got to pee behind the gas station there. That person will remain nameless for anonymity's sake. But yeah, it's like that stuff you look back on. And I just went to the Thomas Rhett concert about a month ago. And it's something about music. I wish I had rhythm. I have a guitar hanging in my bedroom. I bought it. I really want to learn how to play it. I have no rhythm. I am iron stock, the stereotype of a white boy. I got no rhythm, but the music speaks to me, and that's how I connect with people. Music and sports are like how you can connect with me.
When you were going to leave middle school, did you have to reconcile that then with these people you were making these connections with in it was a Wissahickon where you like do you know people at LaSalle that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to come join you guys, or is that going to be a fresh start? Are you looking at the Kevin DeProsperous and Javier and those guys being like, hey guys, been real, but now I'm just going to go over here? What's that transition like for you?
So my entire life, I've felt like an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, where it's like, look at me, look at me. Nobody really wants to look at me, like whatever. So when I left middle school, it was just sort of like sign my yearbook, and I don't think I had that self-awareness or bandwidth to go ahead and like reconcile things with people. It sort of was just like, these guys all hate me, and I'm not good enough to be here. My brother goes to school at LaSalle, and it's a good education. My parents are suggesting it. I have amazing parents who are like my best friends. So it was, again, I say everything happens for a reason. So I was blessed with a great education. And this will be a shout out to Eric Payne mostly right now, because whenever we'll be hanging out back in the day in his teal Corsica with the little diamond valve stem covers.
I remember the Corsica.
You heard that, Doubles. He would always go like, me and Kevin are going somewhere. I'm like, it's actually Kevin and I. And he's like, okay, LaSalle, like it would always be that sort of thing. So got a great education there, played soccer. It's when I picked up lacrosse, played lacrosse there. And it just was, again, just running through life, not feeling like good enough. That's when I started drinking, my drinking like career, as you might say. I ended up going to college, playing lacrosse in college, and it's here we are.
Did you, when you get to LaSalle, then what's different that makes it easier? Is it the dress code? Is it the dress code?
Nothing made it easier. I still got bullied, but not bullied in the sense of like I'm gonna fight you. Like when we had those like inner pod wars, I remember back in the day where people would just be like fake fighting in the hallways. It was more like
pod wars. God,
I knew I had to bring that up, but yeah. So LaSalle was like everybody, and this isn't. I'm not putting anyone down or saying it's wrong. It's just how I fit into equations because I guess. We judge ourselves by our behind the scenes and everyone else by their highlight reel. And that's why
Say that again?
We judge ourselves by our behind the scenes and everyone else by their highlight reel.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's
really good.
Right. And like with the social media now, we know everything about everybody, but at the same time, we don't really know anything about anybody anymore. Because you're going to procure whatever you want to put on your social media and let me think like life is great, blah blah blah. Look at this money, look at my new car. But when was the last time you got to, aside from this podcast, which is why I always thought it was amazing, that you really got to sit down with peers and say, like, how are you feeling? Like, how did you feel in middle school? Like, how can we, or whatever it is. So anyhow, when I got to LaSalle, all those kids had been together since grade school, and some of them had a decent amount of money. And I'm not the guy to get into like socioeconomic conversations and like all that. I know it exists. I just am not that well versed in it. But I know there was a strata there of wealth at LaSalle, and some kids that went to a grade school that cost several $1,000s. Like, so the writing's sort of on the wall. And again, it's like any high school. There's the jocks, there's the nerds, there's the this, there's the that, the band guys, but there was no girls there. Everybody had to wear a uniform, and it was sort of like it was like a job for me. It was like I'm putting in time here, but I got my boys I'm going to go play hockey with after school, and you just sort of went through the motions. I remember, what was the deli that was on the other end of town in Ambler, not Costa's, the other side. All like if you went down Butler and you're heading towards Costa's and you made a left.
Nick's.
Yes, it was like you made a left from where
Reefs
Casey's
Mill,
Alley's is.
Reefs
Yeah, it was like that
Mill,
weird intersection.
Tennis Avenue, Mount Pleasant, Spring Garden, that four-way. Yeah, I think it was Nick's Deli.
That was the one. I'll never forget it. Some of the guys I think were leaving school on their own accord a little early, we'll say.
Sure.
And I was done. Like I had free periods for 7th and 8th. So I remember meeting the guys there, and like I have like my tie on and like come in. They're like, "Would you just leave a business meeting?" But the cheesesteaks were always amazing there. But it was always like that would be like the spot to meet up when we could start driving for whatever reason. But yeah, like LaSalle, it was a good time. But again, I didn't fit in. But I had my Wissahickon buddies then that I sort of could play sports with, do that, and that's how it went.
Do you think if you, and this is such a ridiculous, just more of a benefit of it's so much further or so much later in in the future. Do you think, looking back, if you had stayed at Wissahickon and knowing the relationships that you had with people and knowing that as soon as LaSalle was out, you were then moving over for socially to hang out with Wissahickon people, do you think it would have been big enough and you would have been able to get over not get over, but get I don't know what the right term would be, but be able to get along and move past the middle school history and exist in the high school? Do you think you would have been able to get through that?
Yeah, I think, and I it's funny that you say it's like a weird question. Like I have thought about that.
It's not fair, right? Because it's,
well, no, I think for sure if I meet those guys going from 7th to 8th grade, I stay at Wissahickon.
Yeah.
And I end up, because, and a bunch of them have said to me after the fact, they're like, "Yo, we didn't know you got," because they were like George Berry, Woodland, Chris Woodland, were all 2 years older than us.
Right.
And like Kevin Knable, Eric Payne, those
Stout.
guys, Stout, good old Stout, were just like a year, Steve Pileggi, like, and a few of them have said to me, like, if we knew that was happening, we would have like, they would have been like my connector to Wissahickon, and that's what happened when I was in high school. They became like my connector. And I think they would have like, I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, like a movie, like, but they said, they're like, we would have stood up for you, or like said, "Hey, like, don't beat this kid up." Like, but that's just the way it went. And for whatever reason, that's the way my story needed to be written. But I think, again, it is good because I got that perspective for now. When I coach these youths, I could sort of take myself back there and remember and be like, I don't want to use the term role model, but be somebody that they can maybe look up to and be like, "Oh, this guy played college lacrosse, this and that." Like, if I got to talk to somebody, I could talk to Coach Chris. And I think that's invaluable. So if I needed to go through a couple rough years to help a kid out nowadays, like that, we all go through stuff in life,
Coming from Wissahickon, where it's co-ed, and then moving to boys only in LaSalle. I often talk about kind of the level of sexuality in Wissahickon was always way more advanced than I was ready for. I felt like people were
Mhm.
already like dating in sixth, seventh grade. You were always hearing rumors, stories. But now you're going to a school in ninth grade where it's all boys. What's that
Mhm.
transition like as a kid that's going through puberty and all that? Like,
Mhm.
where did you stand prior to Wissahickon, or when you're in Wissahickon? Do you feel like you were in line with those guys? Were you dating? And then what's that like when you make the move and you're not going to school with any girls?
Yeah. This sort of reminds me of when you interviewed Gebert and he was like, I got pushed in the bathroom and I didn't know what to do. Like, I sort of, when I was listening to that, I had a laugh. I wanted to be in line with the girls and I wanted to be like, hey, like, let's date or whatever you think you're going to do in seventh grade. Um, and I think being the new guy, that I did get interest from some girls, but not having any game, which I don't think I really have a lot of slick game now. More like I just go with like the honest, like, hey, I'm Chris. I like you. Here's a mixtape. It's 2021, Chris. The mixtapes are out. Still
Mm,
working it. But the one nice thing about LaSalle was that you didn't have to worry about the girl aspect. It could just be, hey, let's play. At our free periods, we didn't have like study hall, so you could go get a second lunch, or you could go play volleyball in the pit, or do your homework. A lot of times, I would just do my homework, so when I got home, I could just play hockey because that's really what
mm,
I was into unknowingly. Uh, Side note, that's when pagers came out, and
right.
I think Stout mentioned this in his interview or whatever, his time talking to you. The pager guy, everybody got their CDs or pagers or cell phones from Dustin back in the day.
Yeah.
Again, much better time. You didn't have to go to the empire of Apple, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Uh, I wish I would have had a flip phone. That's one of my major regrets. I never had a flip phone. So, or like you change the Nokia faceplates out,
Oh,
to match your
right.
outfit. Kevin and I used to change our beeper cases to like,
Mm.
yo, give me the red front, you take the black back, like
Well, for you
silly.
then, what was your high school? I mean, you mentioned that was where your drinking career kind of started. Was
Yeah,
that what was that? What was that world? Was that friends in school? Was a Hicken crowd? Was that
yeah.
other influences?
Well, it was more so like just my buddies. I was hanging out with Wissahickon guys then, so it would just be like, hey, where can we steal a little? Because again, you couldn't walk into the beer store and buy unless you went down to the end of 309.
Cheltenham, right?
Yeah,
Exactly at the deli in Cheltenham. Yes.
right. But it was like, what can you get? And then just trying to, for me, I mean, I drank from the age of 16 to 28, and then I got sober. So for me, it was a little bit different than it sort of started out like normal high school drinking and this and that, and then it just changed into different things for me. So that's sort of my story and how it's evolved. But it was buddies, and it was that I'm sure a lot of us have done it. Just, oh, I took some liquor from my dad's cabinet, I refilled it with some water. I could imagine if I was, whatever, a normal dad drinking or whatever, and then I go to drink my vodka, and it's like, this tastes real diluted. Thanks for stealing my liquor and putting a Sprite in there.
Mm.
But I think we've all been that way. Like, what was your first? Like, where were you back then? Were you picking up anything with friends or?
Never. None of my friends drank, and
Mhm.
a lot of my friends, their parents were all very tight, so we couldn't really
Mm,
go from one to the other. None of them were lax in that way. That if one of them got caught, all parents would be aware and be on high alert. So that just was
mm,
never a thing. First time I ever drank was really like had drinks to drink. I think my uncle gave me a beer once when I was like 15, 16.
mm,
Didn't like it, but I wasn't like I had like a quarter of it. First time I really like drank was senior year in high school. Buddy brought like a bottle of whiskey over hanging out, but like we had always hung out. We just usually had wings, whatever. Like we never, um, wasn't like it was like a normal thing. We did it once. I didn't even know if I was like drunk. I was like, I don't know. And like never didn't even try. I drank at senior week. I had like I
Mm-hmm.
had some beers. But I didn't even recognize like again, I didn't know if it was working. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you hear that with weed, right? I don't even know if I got high the first time. That's how I felt
Yeah.
like the first couple times I was drinking. I was like, it tastes like shit. I don't like
Yeah.
this. It wasn't until college when I would start making mixed drinks,
Oh
so
yeah.
with soda that I was like, okay, now I like this.
Okay, I could do this.
I've had two or three. You level out how much you're putting in. Like I'm getting it now. This is okay. So
Yeah.
it took probably till I was like 19, 20 for me to actually like try drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a
Um,
slow
I,
bloomer, I guess.
yeah, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up like hanging out at friends' houses. Like it seems like every friend group had that one friend's house that was like the spot. Like you would go to. I remember going to Kev's house. Like we would always be either in the basement, not in the basement, like in the garage or like out back, and that was like the play. Like he had a hot tub, so it was always like, oh, it's going like I'm sure that hot tub, the pH level was so unbalanced because we would just jump in like cologne on and like
Mm.
just from playing hockey, like just jump in like, oh, we're in the hot tub. I know your first job was Wawa, right? I heard that.
McDonald's. McDonald's when I
Uh,
was 15, and then when I turned 16, I moved over to Wawa.
gotcha. I had the Wawa hoagie tie to wear to high school
It's
because that
apropos.
nickname, yes, that nickname was my grandfather's in World War II,
Get out.
was my father's when he swam in college, my brothers and mine, all for
Every
legitimate reasons.
all called you Hoagie.
Yep,
You're all called Hoagie.
yep. I still got the Flyers jersey with the name on the back from when we used to play up at the
Wow.
park. Yep. So that's been, I haven't been called that in several years. And now when people yell it out, when I see my old friends, and there's a lot of people look up like, what? I was like, oh, I won a hoagie eating contest once. Sometimes they don't need to know the real story. Why, why ruin a good story with facts?
Did you work in high school?
Yes, my first job, and I don't know which one came first. I was either working at Buckman Ski Shop or Lids in the
Yeah.
Montgomeryville Mall. Yep.
Lids, yes.
Hmm. Yes,
Wow.
yes, it's crazy. I was a big so another thing I did as a family was ski. I started skiing when I was 2 years old and started snowboarding when I was 14. So like growing up, that was a real big thing. And I think that's what led me to the job at Buckman's.
Mm.
And I remember, running skis and this and that. Like it's just takes you back to that first job. And you made like $60 and you're like, well, where did the other 30 go? And they're like, oh, that's taxes. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, cool. Like so learning all those life lessons early on was something else, crazy. But yeah,
Where'd your money go for? What did you use your money for as a kid?
what did I use my money for? I'm sure it was food.
Yeah,
That's
that was
some,
all mine.
like the I I'm sure it was Chick-fil-A food or Palermo's pizza. Or if I saved up for like I know I had one pair of Jordans growing up.
Mm.
And maybe it was like that, or it was going to Rainbow Records if we could get
Oh,
a ride over to Rainbow Records to buy some of that. But yeah, it was normally like I was very fortunate that a lot of times my parents would help me out with things, but they would always say like keep your money and like I would buy. I remember buying a 30-inch TV back in the day that was big with the VCR combo in it.
yeah,
And we
yeah.
were trying to get it up to my bedroom before my dad got home, my mom and I, and we're hiking it up there. And it's just crazy how far technology has come. Because I remember going to freshman year of college and we had to rent a U-Haul because the computers were, a 3x3 box just for the monitor
Mm.
and the tower and all this stuff, the bed, I had to have a loft. And now it's like these kids show up with like an iPad. It's like, shoot,
Hmm.
and I feel extremely old saying that. And when I say to them that my freshman year of college, the second week was the attacks on the World Trade Center, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't born yet when that happened." I'm like, "Cool, I feel like a
Yeah.
dinosaur now."
While you're in, I mean, did you make connections? You talk about like the people in at Wissahickon, but did you have connections at LaSalle? Did you feel like, I mean, there were, I know like Adam Comisac went to LaSalle, Joey
Hmm.
Blake went to LaSalle from
Yeah,
Wissahickon. Did you make, was there any camaraderie with Wissahickon people? Were you able to make any connections with other people? What was your social life like within the school?
yeah, I made some connections. Ryan Parfit went there.
Right.
Yeah, so we spent some time hanging out. A couple other guys that we were just topical friends, like that I did the ski club with. Went on some trips there, but it wasn't like, oh, you went to Wissahickon. Oh, now we're going to be friends, because I felt like leaving Wissahickon was just like I never thought that I would have such lifelong friends from Wissahickon, and that's why I always say without certainty, if I could go back and knowing that I would get along with all those guys, like I would have stayed in Wissahickon, and it would be funny to see how my life would have been different in some ways. Um, so yeah, it's real interesting to think about, what could have been, but it wasn't a connector. It just was a time.
How do you think it would have been different if you were to guess?
Who knows? I mean, I still think I would have gotten to the same college. I don't think that would have changed it. I think your high school education is somewhat of what you make it. I don't know. I'm not comparing teachers from LaSalle to Wissahickon. I know something that would have been different. I've really learned my time management skills at LaSalle because there was no bells at all in the school.
Oh,
You just have to, if you're on a free period and you need to get to your next class by 10:20, you better look at your watch and get there on time. Um, so I
interesting.
think that would have been different. I was never one to really cave to peer pressure, but I think certain situations I may have been more inclined to cut class with a friend if I went to Wissahickon, or hey, let's do this. And who knows if I would have met a girl back then in just high school, but how that would have changed, because again, there was no connection. It was all the girls went to the Mount or Gwinnett that we had like interactions with.
Mm.
But it's an interesting thing to think about how life could have been different. If you picked one way or the other.
Did you have a favorite class at LaSalle?
Favorite class. I always think about this, and I feel like a really bad student saying this, but I don't know what I excel at. Like, I feel like I'm a personable person and I'm really caring. And if I could go back and change my college career, I would have went into special or early education. Um, so I don't know how that translates, because I never really liked reading books. I never was really great at math, and we've already gone over how I like science, and like history was sort of just in the past. So I'll just cop out with Jim with phys ed. Home ec. There was a conversation on this podcast about home ec before,
Hmm.
where one semester was sewing.
Right.
Yeah, my
It was
bag.
split. It was split between sewing and cooking for the marking period. Yeah.
Yes, yes. My bag was supposed to have a drawstring. There was no drawstring. Like, I don't know what I excel at. I guess it's being personable and being witty, maybe, but they didn't have classes for them. So I looked at, I really tried to find old photos. I ripped my parents' house apart because I keep a lot of the stuff and I know it's there. I just couldn't find it. But I found my old high school, like, report cards that my mom had, like, just, collecting dust somewhere. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a solid semester of C, D, C, D, oh, a B. And then around junior year, for whatever reason, I don't know if I started to apply myself or if I had professors that really spoke to me. That's when I got into marketing, which I went to college for. Even though I'm not in that field now, I really do like that field. Uh, and I started to get, the 3.0 average and this and that, but it was never like, oh my God, I love science. Like, just let's get through.
What does that mean that you got into marketing?
So there was, I think it was my junior year, there was a marketing class
Hmm.
that you could take. and I took that, and I always liked the idea, like driving down the city and you see all the billboards. And this was before obviously any digital marketing or anything like that was a thing. Um, but I always liked the idea of like getting somebody interested in a product or in a service, but never wanted to be the guy that's like, hey, sign on the dotted line here. Let's let's get your money. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're taking advantage of somebody. I want to make your day better by you buying this product because you need it. So that's why when I could do marketing, it seemed like real interesting. And I remember I didn't know what I was going to be driving up to college in that U-Haul with my dad, and I said, "Dad, like, what should I major in?" And he's like, "Well, why don't you try business or like administration or marketing?" And that's how I got into that. And you
That's
know,
so interesting. That's you hear about the different like sports that private school has available, but then you hear about, oh wow, marketing, like that's not a thing. I don't think that we had in public school, or at
right,
Wissahickon at least, something so diverse of a
right,
class.
yeah, that's something. I like to, like I said, I talked to my Wissahickon friends, and they would joke with me because I'd be like, "Oh, like when we're going to formals, like, oh, you don't know how to tie a tie? Let me show you." Like, and they're like, "Oh, well, thanks, LaSalle," and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. A lot of those guys taught me about hip hop, which I listen to still to this day, which some of those guys at LaSalle didn't really know about. So
Yeah, and
it doesn't hurt having a diverse group of friends.
yeah, not for nothing though. When I talk to other people about this podcast or just my time in high school, and one of the
Mhm.
things that often will come out about my experience is the fact that I took Japanese, and they go, "You had Japanese," and I go, "Oh yeah, we had like four. We had Spanish and Japanese and German and French and Latin. I guess that's five, right?" And they go, "You had Japanese and Latin, like from us from a public school, we weren't too shabby in our
Mhm.
offerings, but marketing is just so micro
Mhm.
of us. In my mind, I just remember, oh, Joey Blake went for hockey. Like,
Mhm.
Wissahickon didn't have an ice rink.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything like that. So it's funny. It's just interesting. This is the first time I've heard about the academic electives that were available that were just so out there. It makes me curious as to what I could have fallen into in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I remember those. You talk about sports, like always competing for like the Friday night football, the championship, the Philadelphia Catholic League championship there,
Mm.
and the rivalries with St. Joe's Prep and the ice hockey team winning state and this and that. And then I got my boys, Eric Payne, Stout, Pileggi, Johnny Brosnan, all holding down the 0-17 Wissahickon Trojans, like at the games and it's crazy what kids have to go through now with sports. Like you watch these shows where we just played like
Yeah.
I don't know, you just played like you
Well, it's
win, you
big. It's
lose,
big money now.
they're recruiting kids for high school
Yeah.
now.
Well, that was always the joke. Like about, I remember Upper Dublin, like just had these monsters on the basketball team that were dunking,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just like, where are they? They're bringing these kids down 309. They don't even live near here. That's what everyone
Mm-hmm.
would always scream, and and I think in some cases that might have been true, but I
Mm-hmm.
think sports were always pretty high profile. I just think with
Mm-hmm.
everything gets so much more attention nowadays, and
Yeah.
the news is so immediate now. It's everything is just so much more dramatic.
Yeah, and I think like sports science has come into the conversation more, where before it was just like, all right, eat some eggs, run a couple miles in the
Right.
summer,
Great point.
and now it's like we're paying big money for you. There's one kid that's being flown from this area to California every weekend and flown back to get better at football. It's just like I don't know, and I sound like an old timer saying all this, but it's like that never was a you might have went from like if you lived in Ambler, if you went to like Montgomeryville to get training, that was like, whoa, you're getting special training.
Well,
But
no, I think there's because there's so much more money in all these things. A lot of these programs have
mhm,
sponsors and McDonald's holding camps
mhm,
and players holding summer camps, and
mhm,
it's just a way to keep to kind of separate the I don't want the weak from the strong. I don't know, but
mhm.
it's incredible the business that's involved in getting a hold of young athletes at such a naive age.
Right. And the
and,
parents just see like this could be a way to college. This
and
could be a way.
roping the parents in at that point. That that's the amazing thing. I thought I knew sports and basketball especially, and I watched this podcast, Knuckleheads, with
Mhm.
Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles, and they're often talking about the different schools that they all went to, and they go, "Oh, I went to so and so high school," and they're like, "Yep," because they know it, because there's like 20 really really big high school programs that kids go to,
Mhm.
because and they move to go to these schools, and you'll hear about, oh, these like five guys went to the same high school, and you go, how does that even happen? It's
Right.
because it's because they're all kind of recruited at 13, 14 years old. They're all given gear, and they're sponsored by Nike, and you know what I mean. They haven't had prom yet.
Right. What let's flash back to something a little more fun.
Yeah.
What was the worst fad or like I don't know how to say it, like worst trend fashion wise that you took part of in high school or college, middle school or high school?
Oh, the fad. I think that I'm not a big fad guy, right? It was never
Mhm.
a logos whatever thing. I didn't know much about fashion, and my parents, I mainly like wore whatever I was given. But there was
Mhm.
a point where I used to get teased all the time about my jeans, because I just wore whatever, and my jeans were tight as fuck, right? And so I remember my mom took me to buy baggy jeans and baggy shorts, because eighth
Mm.
grade was like the baggy era was coming out, and the pants
Mhm.
down your ass and the boxer shorts, and I bought like Paco jeans, and I still
Mm.
wear I still have these jean shorts that I only wear them to
Mhm.
festivals,
Okay.
because but I somehow they still fit, but that's how big they were, that they fit me now as a grown man with
Yeah, I got some of those.
yeah, that. But back then, when I was probably 10 inches smaller,
Mhm.
at 12, 13 years old, they were like all the way down, and I often didn't really wear a belt, because as a kid you don't wear belts, and you
Yeah.
wanted to like pull them up, and I just remember like being so embarrassed that I knew my ass was hanging and I couldn't even control it, but thinking, that's what we're supposed to be doing. This is Everyone's gonna think I'm so cool.
Yeah. That's
You?
funny. One that sticks out for me is when I got to Wissahickon, uh, I showed up after wearing uniforms my whole life, and I knew everybody had boots, like Timberland boots,
Oh, right.
those brown boots. So I go home, and my mom and aunt I think were there, and I'm like, Mom, everybody at school has these brown boots, and I need a pair of brown boots. So my aunt took me out, or I don't know how it actually transpired, but I know my aunt bought them for me. They were like back then they were like $50 or $60 or something. They were Fila's,
Oh, yeah.
and I got to school, and everybody's like, "You can't wear those. They're not. What are you doing?" Like, and I was like mortified. I got home, I put them in my closet. My mom's like, "Where are those boots at?" I'm like, "Mom, I can't wear them again. I'll wear them to do yard work. I'm not wearing." She's like, "Your aunt bought you this." I was like, evidently, I can't wear them. Everybody's making fun of me. But the real one that I had in mind was I dyed my hair. I used to put the little sun in for the tips or whatever.
Right.
But when Eminem came out, everybody was dyeing their hair. So Kevin was doing his with his girlfriend at the time. And she says, "Do you want to do yours?" I was like, "Yeah, just straight blonde. I don't want it strawberry blonde like you have yours." Like she goes, "Yeah, it's just blonde." Put it in. Afterwards, I look at the box, strawberry blonde. I'm like, I can't have strawberry blonde hair. We dyed it again. Still a little strawberry blonde. The next day, I dyed my hair 3 times within 24 hours. I couldn't touch my hair. It was so burnt. I was
Wow.
18 years old. I come home and my mother's like, and my dad, who never says anything, he goes to my mom, "Don't worry about it. It's just hair. It'll grow back. Like it's fine." Like, but I look back on those pictures, and there's some pictures of Eric and I at the after prom, and we have a tape of us singing "Ice Ice Baby," and me with this bright white bleach blonde hair. And I think that was where one of the best fads I think everyone on the face of the earth was starter jackets.
Oh yeah.
So good that they brought it back now, and these kids think they're doing something
Hmm.
with the Charlotte Hornets jackets and like this and that. Like you had girls wearing jackets of teams they didn't know if it was football, NBA, anything. It was all I like the color. And
Yeah.
now these kids think they're doing something, but that started in the 80s.
Yeah, the starter jackets and the trapper keepers of the teams.
Yes, yes, good trapper keeper. And it seemed like everybody had a JanSport or an LL Bean backpack.
Hmm.
They were
Yeah.
like the two options.
Yeah. 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 I was a Jan sporter.
Yeah. Or like who when you're going to class and like you always have that one buddy that would never do his homework and he's like, Joe, let me get a pencil. Like, what are you gonna do with this pencil? You're not gonna take notes while you're there.
Just want to look good.
Yeah, just I want to make sure I don't fail this class. If I take a pencil, the teacher said they'd pass me. Well, that's not bad. Not bad.
What was your college selection process like? What's the help process? Was there help from LaSalle? Was there guidance for you outside of like your dad? You know, getting to that
Yeah,
point where you're going, you're asking him what should your major be before you get there.
yeah,
Where are you applying, and who's helping you figure
yeah.
that out?
So for me, I knew that I was a type of person that excelled with like one-on-one communication with professors. Like I knew if I went to the Penn States of the world, I would just be lost. So I went to all like mid-level schools. I wanted to go away, but not so far that I couldn't get home if need be. So I applied to like Moravian, Albright, Millersville, uh, Elizabethtown, where I ended up going. It's funny, my father went to Elizabethtown, but he never once suggested me to go there or pressured me. I just had been going there since I was a child for homecomings and just legitimately felt comfortable there. I remember touring Rutgers, and 5 minutes into the tour, I said to my dad, I'm like, we can leave because this is way too big
Hmm.
for me, you know? And with my drinking, I think if I would have went to those bigger schools, in some ways, I think I would have gotten in more trouble. Or it would have been more of an issue where we were mostly like growing up, we were like house parties. I feel like we were at Brandon McQuaid's a lot and like those sort of house parties. Then college was like dorm room parties. Um, so I would visit Penn State and was like, wait a minute, you just go to this place and they just give you a cup and you fill it with beer. Like you don't need to pay, find a way to sneak it in. It just was like frat row. Like I know I would have probably would have failed out or had more trouble there. So, but that was my selection. It just was, I knew I had to be in a school that was smaller. Um, I remember a guy that I went to high school with was going to Elizabethtown too, but it wasn't like any Wissahickon connections. I do think a lot of people that went to my college thought that about 5 to 7 guys that did graduate from Wissahickon High School did go to our college because they were there every weekend. They would drive up and party, and so much so that campus security got to know their cars because they had rims on them, and they would show up in quite a scene in this little farming town in central Pennsylvania. But yeah, we always joke about that. I'm like, well, you guys didn't get a degree from Elizabethtown, but you spend enough time up there. And then
Hmm.
I did spend a couple nights at Thaddeus Stevens Tech School. Brian Finnegan, Eric Payne, and Chris Stout, those guys that all went there. Got a couple rides back up to the area with them. They were a wild bunch up there. So, yeah.
And then your transition into college, how
Hmm.
does that? So I mean, so when I talked to Jason Herb, he talked
Hmm.
about his drinking,
Yeah.
and he said he thought similar to you, kind of started with friends in school, in high school, middle school, high school, whatever.
Hmm.
And he felt that at that age he just didn't know that he was doing it differently than everyone else. But it was when he was in college that everything for him kind of bottomed out, and he never
Yeah.
finished.
Yeah.
How do you handle your world with that in college?
Yeah. So luckily, I had a healthy dose of fear in my life, and that's something that I still try to address to this day. Is like I call it faith over fear, and a fear of not graduating college and being a drop like a failure. was something. So like when I wasn't drinking, it was like, let me get my homework done. And I was always like the party drinker. Like I'll be out on the scene and there'll be this and that. And I think I'm being funny. And like, that's how I feel like I'm associating with my peers and fitting in. And I sort of laughed when you said that you would not know if the drink was working for you. For me, I was always, some people are like, oh, I'm going to have this scotch and I'll sip it because I know it'll put me on my ass if I drink, like chug it. For me, I would have like one drink and then be like, oh, I'm fine. And then have like three more real quick. And then before I know it, I would be drunk. And then I would just be causing a scene, being, I thought, witty and funny, but it really just wasn't. And that's how I thought I was just the same. My drinking issues started when I was like 26, 25, 28 in that area, because I still talked it away like, oh, high school, we're just, in the woods catching a beer. It's just like what you see. Then in the movies, in college, like the Animal Houses and the old schools of the world were like, this is what we do. This is what I heard my dad did in college. Like people, have big parties. But then when I got out of college and like everybody was starting families or at least like getting into their career path. And for me, it was like, I'm just out here getting into trouble, and not moving forward. And luckily I got sober. So yeah. And that I always say to people, like, I'll talk as much or as little about getting sober and like all that as people want to talk about, because sometimes it makes some people feel uneasy. And when people get to know me, or if they knew me back when I was drinking, they know that this is a better version of me for all parties involved.
So what's your college, while you're in college, what are you thinking you are going to do? I mean, you're in the marketing world. You said, but you didn't end up in marketing.
No.
What?
So when I'm in college, I started playing lacrosse. I tore my ACL, my MCL, ruptured my meniscus, and cracked my kneecap playing freshman year lacrosse. Ended up in a wheelchair. So for me, I guess I never really had a lot of foresight. Like I was dealing with that freshman year. Really had the mindset of coming back and playing junior or sophomore year. Came back, played some, but just for medical advice, it was just like, don't, it was bone on bone is basically what my knee is. Wow. So as far as like my career path, as far as like job went, I never really put much thought into it. And I regret that to this day, that I didn't do internships and this. I was just like, yo, where are we partying at this weekend? You're talking about 30 years old. I'm worried about 30 minutes from now. So I didn't really put much stock into it. I graduated, or actually it was senior year of college, and I got dumped by a girl, partly because of my drinking. And my mom's like, you need to get out of the house. So I started working at Montco at the bookstore. And that's how I got into this bookstore gig. I just started as a stock boy, moved to Ohio State, took a final class there, graduated with my degree from Elizabethtown. And it was September of 2005. And I said, it's the first time in my life I don't have school to go back to. What am I going to do with my life? And I called up the bookstore again, started working as a part-time stock boy. And here I am 20 years later, 15, 16 years later. And I worked at Stanford. I've worked at Villanova, Jefferson, St. Joe's, Washington, D.C. And it's just crazy how that path sort of just all because I got dumped by a girl and I had to get out of the house, or my mom would have thrown me on my head from being so rammy and brokenhearted. Yeah.
What's the learning process of that to where you feel like, oh, this could be my job because I'm sure, like you said, you just had to get out of the house. You had to do something.
Yeah.
You're not thinking at 24 or whatever, you're not thinking this is a career path. Where do you start feeling like this could be for a while?
I had my first manager take a chance on me, and he said, listen, this guy I got here that's been a hard worker and was a temp, and now he's running shipping and receiving area for us. We have an opening as the textbook manager, and he's got his college degree and everything. I want to take a shot on him. So this guy gave me a shot, and I did really well, and there was opportunities, and I just rode the wave and said, I just kept saying yes. I would
Mm.
show up, work hard, and they said, well, this store's now open, and do you want to go on the training program? Sure. Well, you got to go to California for that. All right, let's go. You know, um, so it just sort of fell into it, and here we are. I mean, it's a good job, but it's not like I wish I would have a job. Like I talk to some people that are like, my life work was to be a nurse or to, be an accountant and this and that. For me, it's like I enjoy my job because I'm personable.
Mm.
It's a specialty sect of retail that has its own. It's not a lot of like Black Friday and all that stuff. It has its own, normally like niche community that's coming into your store. Especially through this pandemic, it's been crazy working in retail. Um, but so I sort of just enjoyed it, and I enjoy the people I work with, and enjoy my favorite time of the year is when we go from summertime to fall classes, and you see that campus start to take life again when the students come back and that sort of thing. So that's what's most enjoyable for me. Um, yeah.
I got to tell you that I do that. It's got to be a heck of a benefit. Someone asked me like, "Oh, don't you love like fall? Don't you feel like it's fall?" And I said, once I left school, I don't feel those same feelings like I used to get that I loved with like, oh, the end of spring, because that things are getting out, and like that real official
Mhm.
start of summer, or the end of summer and like the start of fall. And for me, it's like I'm waiting for a hoodie. I'm waiting for like the hoodies to come out. That's when I feel like things are changing. There's no rush
Mhm.
for a Christmas break, or that
Right.
just like those 5 days that you might get between Thanksgiving. You're lucky enough that
Right.
like you just said, like you're getting those feels still.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, and it's funny that you said it because a lot of people say to me, they're like, when they're selling their books back to me, they'll be like, "Oh, have a good summer." I'm like, "It's just a warm working season." Like, and like, or people will be like, "Oh, well, you must not work in the summer." I'm like, "No." Like, how do you think those books get there in the fall? And how do you think like all those kids that are at summer camp, like where they get their sweatshirts at all year round, like that sort of thing? Or when I would go on blind dates, or like, I guess those dating apps,
Yeah.
and people will be like, "You work at the bookstore?" I'm like, whoa. It's like I play for the Yankees or like work for the evil empire. I'm like, listen, it's not me that sets the prices, it's the publishers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. Uh, yeah, I don't know how people like, well, I know how people do this, but like the dating apps are just, I feel everybody's pain that's single with me out here. You can't
Yeah.
meet anybody. Everybody says, oh, you'll meet your wife at the grocery store. You'll meet her on the train. Mm-mm. And especially try to go up to somebody wearing a mask now. Hey, how you doing? Whoa, whoa, you got the COVID? So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, pandemic aside, where are you at with like being single? We're hitting our big numbers here age
hitting our
wise, and
stride,
yeah,
hitting our stride.
a lot of our friends, like you mentioned, like when you're growing up and you get out of college and people are getting married and having kids, and same boat. I talked to Eric Coxon about the same
Hmm.
thing. Just kind of this almost having to feel comfortable, being comfortable with yourself. It's a weird thing, but like being okay with the decision that you made so that you don't force the wrong decision, I guess. That's
Hmm.
kind of how he did it. That has stuck with me for 2 years now, of just
Hmm.
trying to be okay with the things that I'm doing. Where are you at with
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So for me, like I've for the longest time tried to make it work with the apps and like the pressing and the trying to make it happen. And I think that's the worst. Like we're not making a cake here. I think that's the worst way to meet someone and to start a relationship. So as cheesy as it sounds, like I've just embraced being single or try to embrace it. And like I've taken up photography and golf, and I am more than blessed with, I call them a lot of nieces and nephews that aren't blood related. I have about four godchildren, and
Hmm.
it's nice. I take for granted that I can watch a football game till 11:30 at night and just work on my putting while I'm here. But I also have these kids that I can like timeshare, I call it. Like, hey, let's go play for a little bit. Oh, it's bedtime. here
Give
you
them
go,
back.
buddy. Like, your kids are freaking out now. I gotta go. Like, I think when you meet the right person, there's a level of compromise that you want to make. I always thought it was funny in like high school or middle school or even afterwards when they're like, "Oh, I got to go hang out with my girlfriend." Like to me, it's like I would want to be with somebody that I would want to hang out with, but he's like, "Nah, I
Mm,
got to put the time in just so X, Y, or Z."
mm.
It's no judgment on other people, but it's just funny. Like, and that's why everybody's like, are you gonna like get married? I'm like, well, I'm trying here, but I'd rather be single than be with the wrong person,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad life. Like I said, I got to golf this morning and do this and that. It's just, I mean,
It's
we'll take it.
it's funny you said that. I don't know if I ever made that correlation, but I definitely hit that moment like 3 4 years ago. Probably like COVID shrinks my time frame, probably 6 years
Yeah,
ago, where I
right.
definitely, I'm in my 30s and I start thinking about the things that I do, and so much of my social aspect was centered around going on dates, to
Hmm.
where, and then I go to work and I started thinking, it's like, where there were all these things I used to be into as a kid or as a teenager or in my 20s, and I feel like I don't have like hobbies, like real hobbies that I do outside of just the social world. And you mentioned
Right.
photography. I started messing with photography a lot more, and just trying to do, doing these podcasts and just trying to do other things that are not just work, and just going on dates to like
Hmm.
complete, to feel like I'm a complete person. One, because I felt like I needed to be able to offer more in dating, but two,
Hmm.
I needed other things to find joy besides finding the one.
Yeah. I mean, like growing up, my parents have been the best role models for um, being in a relationship. Uh, they are happily married and still go on dates 43
Mm,
years into marriage. My dad still opens the door for my mom. Like, so I get a lot of my, like, I felt like I needed to be married and have kids and have a single family home to be successful. I guess if we want to get like analyze this, but now I'm realizing like I have a lot to offer my friends and other people by just being myself. And there's no formula for success. It's it's a feeling. Some people put a dollar amount associated with it. Some people put degrees on it. Some people have this. It's more of an internal thing for me. Like, and I have to accept that success. Just like I would give to someone else, and enjoy it. But yeah, definitely taking up hobbies. When I started traveling alone, really taught me a lot about myself. Um, I was supposed to take a trip with a girlfriend back in 2015, and she dumped me right after we made the trip. And I was like, "Should I go? Shouldn't I go?" And I'm like, "Fuck it, it's booked." And I went, had the best time of my life. And every year since then, I try to take one trip alone
mm,
somewhere. And when you tell people you're traveling alone, you would think you were telling them you have the launch codes to nuclear weapons. They're like, so wait, you're going to dinner? Who you meeting? I'm like, now you got to, obviously you can't yell this because it's not the safest thing to tell people, but like, it's just like, yeah, I'm traveling alone. Like, oh, okay, well, I've had people invite me to have dinner with them, like this and that. And there's sometimes where I'll take them up on it. And I've made lifelong friends from just sitting down having a communication with a complete stranger. But there's other times where I'm like, no, I'm fine. They're like, are you sure? Like, you don't want to come? Like, no, I'm just going to have dinner. Like, I'm going to this concert later and then I'm going to go see a game tomorrow. Like, wow, that's amazing. It's like when people won't get on the elevator with you when it's going down because they're going up.
mm-hmm,
It's like the thing's going to go back up shortly.
mm-hmm.
Um, but just again, it's like traveling alone. Well, yeah, if I waited till I had a wife to travel or a girlfriend, I might never get to see whatever, whatever. Maybe I can inspire somebody else to try to travel a little bit. I
No,
don't know.
that is exactly it. Not holding up your life for, because the relationship can't be the end all be all of progression. At a
Right.
certain point. It took me a
Yeah.
long time to realize that.
Yeah, because you watch TV and all you see is like couples together, and now there's been diversity within, what the couple looks like on TV, or what the family dynamic is on TV. Uh, and I guess maybe there's shows out there where there's like people living good life single, but it's like it's not what you normally see on TV and in
Right.
society. You know, again, you look on Instagram, you're like, oh, this is our daughter's first birthday party. It's like, oh, where's my daughter? Well, I don't know. My daughter might be hitting an 85 on a golf course. Like, I don't know. Like, but I love when I go over to my friend's house and their kids are like, and of course, it's like, what sugar do you want? Sure, you could stay up later. Okay, yeah, let's go for a walk and you could ride the dog. Oh, you're having a meltdown because you had too much sugar. Sorry, Uncle H has to go. Uncle H has made a mistake here. But I think you can impact people's lives in that way. And I think, again, what you've done with this podcast, and again, you should be doing voiceover work. When I first put it in the pod, I was like, damn, that is a voice. That is a voice made for radio.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, no doubt. And I think I wouldn't be the person I am without going to Wissahickon. And there's a lot of good contacts I made by not just even without going to the high school, and guys that I see. And it seems like I've known them for 5 years. Like you said, COVID has shrunk your years down. I look at some of these guys and I can't believe I've known them for 20 years, 24 years. It's like, wait, we're only like 31 years old? Like we're only 28, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just crazy how this all has come full circle.
Yeah.
So
if you could have given yourself, if you could give yourself advice from then, maybe right before you left for LaSalle, 8th grade Hoagie, what do you think it would have been? It would be.
Don't care as much what they think. Like, and they're not all perfect.
Yeah.
The jock that can throw for 300 yards in a game, his father might not tell him he did a great job that game. The girl that looks like a bombshell that you can't even string two words together when you walk past her in the hallway, she might just want somebody to tell her she is a nice pair of jeans on that day because nobody or just tell her she did well in that math test, maybe, but we all strive for attention in our own ways. So yeah, really just be a good person and don't care as much, what people may or may not be thinking about you. Because quite honestly, a lot of times people don't care about you. Like, not that they don't care. Well, they don't care, but like they're so wrapped up in their own internal monologue.
Yeah.
They're not like when people say, hey, how's your day going? And when you're like, oh, well, it's okay, good. So I need you to get that report done. It's like, you don't really care. Like, you don't care if I'm wearing a blue hat or a black hat. And for so many years, I would be so caught up on that. Like, oh, was this that? Like, so it doesn't matter.
That is the number one thing I've learned from this podcast is that nobody cared as much as I cared. I cared so much, and I thought everyone else was thinking about it too. And it's not until until I started talking to people and I go, oh my God, they never thought about it again. I wish I had known that. The only reason I thought about it is because I just assumed everyone else, you do something, you think, oh, everyone's going to fucking laugh at me. They're probably talking about it when they go home about what a dummy I was, or getting in shoving a kid or getting in an argument with a kid. I'm thinking, oh man, I told that kid to shut up in math class. He's probably plotting against me right now. Or, or you just see them the next day and they look at you and you go, oh, he's probably thinking about pushing me back. And then you come to find out, they never. Eric Coxon said a great thing when I was talking to him about his best friend was Gene Smack, and Gene was someone that I used to always have conflicts with in middle school especially, and that carried on through high school where it was just that remnants of, oh, I know he doesn't like me, so I don't like him, and I never really had that conversation with Gene. And Eric looks at me and he goes, Brad, he's my best friend. Never, ever, ever were we sitting at home and he's like, yo, you know who's an asshole? Brad Corbett. And that just hit me where it's just like, wow, that's exactly what my thought was that people would go home and think about the shit that, again, like you said, I think about the behind the scenes. Other people remember the highlights, and I'm thinking they're thinking about the behind the scenes as like I am.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, one thing I think about nowadays is that you're not as important as you think you are, but you're more important than you'll ever realize. And that to me is like crazy, where you think like, oh my God, like I pushed that kid and he fell, like he probably is going to come in and kick my ass tomorrow. When really it's like that, or the kid that you said like, hey man, that's a cool trapper keeper too. Like your impact there could have such a great impact on him. And I'm not one to say like one action could change the world, but I think like you pay it forward enough, and I think somebody will hear it, and then I don't know what'll change because of it. But like if I can't change the world, I can change someone's world,
Mm.
you know. And I think that is what is best. Like what I want to be best known for is like somebody that would always like listen or be considerate. And I think in the dating world that plays to the negative side, because like the texting, like come on, like I like just text back. Like I don't play any games or this or that, but I care too much. And I remember Chris Stout once saying to me back in the day, I would be like, well, this girl hasn't written me back. And I said to her, like, he's like, let me see what you wrote. And I said, have a nice day. He's like, why do you care what her day's like? And I'm like, that had a profound effect on me, because it's like, maybe I should, like, I care too much, where it's like,
Yeah.
she's probably thinking about 40 different things. And it's like, I'm like, where's this text? Or like, did I use the wrong emoji when I texted my buddy? Is he like mad at me? Like when I told him the Eagles fucking suck, like, is he like, you know, or that guy cut off, like, did he take my license plate number down? He's going to like come kill me. Like, it
Yes.
just like,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
So many times I've apologized to someone for something that I said or did days before, and they look at me and they go, "Oh, no, no, I never thought about that again. You were fine." Like, no, I'm like, "Oh, really?" Like, I thought about that for like 3 or 4 days, and they're like, "No, like, I never thought about it again. You're fine, dude." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
yeah, yeah. And that's why I go back to like, I'm egomaniac with an inferiority complex, where it's like, look at me, look at me. Oh, wait, don't look at me. But yeah, it's so true. Yeah,
Sort of like doing a podcast where you interview other people because you don't want to talk about you, but then you talk about you.
yeah. That's see, it's the way
You
things
figured me
happen.
out, Hoagie.
Well, my work here is done then. Uh, and then like this whole time, I'm just like, man, people are gonna think this is the worst podcast, because I don't know what I just talked about for an hour and a half. But hopefully somebody gets a laugh out of it, and you know,
Yeah, that is the funny. Everyone always does think that about themselves, but I always try and tell people. I say someone's going to appreciate it, and like it's
mhm.
people can't fathom that they have something valuable to
Yeah,
of that normal conversation can just like be inspirational or informative to people, and it's like
right.
everyone's got a story. I mean, you've got gems, dude. You've got some
Yeah,
serious
I don't
the
know.
backstory highlight thing. Like I'm gonna use that in life.
I hope so. I
Yeah,
hope
dude,
so.
that is
The
a
other
good
one,
one.
the other one I want people to hear is move a muscle, change a thought.
Explain that
So,
one to me.
okay. So for me, um, when I get caught up in my head and things are just like the text message or the whatever it is, did I push that guy down? Is he going to come kill me? If I either as stupid as getting in my car and screaming as loud as I can, or if I just go for a walk, or if I pick up a phone and call a friend, something that gets me out of me. And that's why I always say, like, move a muscle, change a thought. Um, that was told to me very early on in my sobriety. And it's something that I've told people, and they're like, yo, like, I did that when my mom was tripping at me, or I was mad about the Eagles game, or like, it's just so funny how we have the power to change our thoughts. And I never believed that either, but because like I'll just hone in on that. Like, uh, Brad didn't text me back. He thought what I said was stupid. Let me text him again. And then it's like, if you've ever seen John Favreau with Swingers, it's the same thing where he
Yeah.
like calls the girl. Like my friend's like, yo, didn't you do that back in high school? I'm like, yeah, thanks. Let's not bring it up. Like, I think I did it to Melissa Morgantan. Sorry. But like, or every girl I've ever dated. Um, but yeah, it's like,
You're dead on. You're dead on. So
it's
many
crazy.
times I will obsess about work, video for clients, this podcast of things, and it will like I check out for I might check out of it for like 2-3 days sometimes because I'm just so mad at myself with what I perceive it to be. And then I do something, I will just stop doing it. I'll go do something else. I'll go play
Mm-hmm.
basketball, whatever. I'll just stop obsessing about it. And then I come back to it and I go,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I can't believe I allowed myself to be so upset about this for days. It's really not a big deal at all. What? Then
Right.
I go, I can't believe that really worked. Like, I really thought, I go, I
Mm-hmm.
can't believe something like that actually worked. And I try
Right.
to remember it. It's really hard for me to put faith in the fact that that's what it was. But
Right.
now the fact that you're saying that, I go, wow, that's
Well,
exactly
that's why I
what it
say to
is.
people, I'm like, take my advice. I'm not going to use it. You might as well take it. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. And like coming on this podcast, like I thought about it, and like I said, I was away and I had time to reflect on it. And I've always been told, like, you tell three stories when you tell a story about your life or whatever, like what you want to say, what you actually said, and then afterwards what you wish you would have said, those sorts of things. And I think the greatest gift that I've gotten from getting sober is a level of self-awareness. And that way, with my self-awareness, I can start to understand other people and really communicate with people. um, so I think that I hope somebody gets something from this. If one person gets something out of this, I feel like it's been a home run in the bottom of the ninth. Um, and I'm sure somebody will somewhere somehow, because I know that.
I did.
Well, there, we don't even need to publish this.
This is
Um,
good.
you
Delete.
know, because yeah, like nobody lost files, extra credit. Um, because I know listening to Javier's, Gebert's, all those things, and like with Gebert's mom passing, like my mom had a heart attack that same year,
Hmm.
and like I could have lost mom, and like there's things that you connect with, that are crazy. And like I was golfing with Eric Payne yesterday, and Steve Newman. And I said to Eric, I'm like, yo, I'm going to be on the podcast tomorrow. And he's like, tell me when it airs. I'm like, I don't think I will. I was like, I know I'm not listening to it. Nobody needs to hear my goof. I don't need to hear my goofy ass voice. Um, but yeah, like he's like, yo, let me know when that comes out. I'm like, you know about me. You don't, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope it helps somebody. It's been a blast. I just loved when I saw your concept. I thought it was spot on because it's everything I sort of believe in, and like the putting to bed 20 years ago. Like I love documentaries and podcasts because you get to see celebrities behind the scenes. To see all my peers behind the scenes, I'm like, oh, Gabbert was a normal person. Like
Mm,
I thought he was like the dude. Like, and when he talks about like everything he went through in college and like
right.
all this stuff, like, and like with you, like WWE, oh man, like you're just another dude. Like you got your own insecurities that you're working with, and you got your own things you're proud of, which is this podcast is. I think it helps a lot more people than you realize, which is cool, real cool.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you, man. That means a lot because the one thing I always tell people, so occasionally on an individual basis, people will mention like, something helping them, but I always tell people that like it helps me. I think it helps me way more than it helps like other people. So it's nice to hear
Mm-hmm.
that like from
Yeah.
even from someone that's like looking at it that maybe has 4 years of separation from
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these names, but you maybe still remember them and remember at least the times to see that it hits you like that too means a lot to me, so thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, man, I'm glad we could reconnect. Like, I think you're doing great things, and I hope this helps somebody, and I hope it wasn't too wordy or stupid. And if it was, people, you probably aren't listening to it now. So,
Last thing I got to do to you, Chris, because I do
yeah,
have the
you
middle
got it.
school yearbook there.
Yes.
There you
The
are.
Nautica striped shirt.
There it
That's
is.
clutch. So here I also got now. See, there's Sean with the Chicago. Look at you got Sean Higgins wearing the Chicago White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
There now is this seventh grade?
Ooh, and we got the Villanova. This is eighth. Am I doing this the right way?
Okay, it's eighth.
Oh,
Okay, I was seeing if we had Eric Payne or Kevin in that one.
Yeah, this is that's eighth grade.
That's our eighth. Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
man.
super. I remember that, and it's funny those clothes back then. Like I have a something from back then, and I put it on. I'm like, what size shirt did I have to get back then? I got. I don't know if you can see this.
I can. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Visor. Yes. You and Eric
That
with a wig.
that that is what this was. Wissahickon prom party 2000. Let's see. And then I have I didn't think you were going to have this. So all right, let me grab it. Okay, here we go. It's downloading. It needs to download. It's having a moment.
It's not local file there.
I guess not. I got my high school.
Perfect.
Because I figured, and yes, they are the bleach blonde tips because that Sonnen was hitting back then. But yeah, that is. I'm so glad you found that. Literally, I can't believe I got rid of mine. I had things written in there like girls circles. Like,
oh yeah,
God, the embarrassment of it all. Like I just think like if I was normal, I could have made. Yes, I was just thinking, and then the other one had the sprockets on it. That's what I was looking for. That was the year before. That's funny the shit you remember. And like literally like circle like this girl and like got no fight with him. Like, oh my God. Oh God. Well, yeah. Well, there you go. I'm glad you found that. That made this whole thing worthwhile.
It's made it worth it.
Yeah. If nobody got anything out of this, you and I got a lot out of it. So
I enjoyed it.
I appreciate your time, man. And I hope we can get together sometime soon. I'll come down. We can go get lunch together at the Italian market. Maybe if any of the other, if anybody else wants to get together as humans, once we can figure whatever's going out in this world.